So pulse oximeter, breathwork stuff. This will not be exciting, but you can at least put some numbers to what I'm saying, right? So it's first thing in the morning. I don't know my CO2 tolerance. Sometimes it's like great in the morning. So we'll see if this works. Sometimes I have to do like a hyperventilation breath warm up, or it's just like it's too uncomfortable to go into the so I'm not holding my breath exactly. I'm just trying to breathe in such a way that I start to sort of desaturate my blood oxygen. And so that also causes a CO2 buildup that I have to acclimate to. And so I'm just trying to get it to where I'm comfortable at like 93 or below. And so when you're doing this, really, any kind of direct control over your blood oxygen is a real breath. So as you get this to kind of like fluctuate in and out, that is learning how to do a real breath. Because if the blood isn't going in and out, then you're not actually breathing. The breath is sort of paralyzed. The breath is sort of like, yeah, it's just paralyzed. There's no rhythm in the blood, which is the only place that the breathing is happening. So if you do like exercise where you're using up all your oxygen or what have you, but you're fundamentally trying to get like, you know, if you do this via exercise, most people can't really exercise for more than 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes at these exertions, and you have to kind of take breaks in between the exertion, right? So the same thing happens with this stuff. So I'll do a CO2 purge and then see if it's like after I get warmed up, you'll find that it's a little bit easier to drop down. So The CO2 alarm is basically the nervous system saying how much CO2 you should or should not have in the body. And so that's all nervous system. The desire, the gasping, the lack of air feeling is entirely mediated by the nervous system, entirely mediated by CO2. So if the more that you get into the body, the less the CO2 shenanigans, the desire to breathe, has to do with anything. It's so hard to do this if you're talking. The more you get into the body, where the desire, the blood oxygen game is that you're trying to play, to where you want your blood to start to become magnetically connected to your breath. When it's fully saturated, there's no magnetic connection to the breath because it doesn't need anything. So as you desaturate and get the oxygen to dip down, your blood is literally craving or magnetically connected to the air. And that magnetic connection isn't just mediating right here. It's wanting its desire for oxygen will transmit through your flesh into the air. The actual magnetism of it, and it's mechanically it's not that noticeable, but it lets you feel like, imagine blowing smoke rings, or when you look at smoke in the air. There's so much stuff going on in the air. If the blood becomes more magnetically attracted to the oxygen or whatever in the air, then you can start to feel all of those patterns. And the same thing happens with the CO2 buildup a little bit. It's like if the blood starts to build up all that, then it's also, through all the capillaries and everything, it has magnetic properties that's repelling all that. And then there's the flow of those currents happens here, but the magnetic field of the currents is happening throughout the entire body system. So when you do the SpO2 training, you're shifting. You're generating basically a type of magnetism, a type of polarity, a type of the energy wants to go that way, and so that charge it generates a field. The charge can't flow here at the hand, but the field is there. And so talking is a thing that takes place on the nervous system. That's right next to the CO2 alarm. So like while you're talking, it's like it puts you in contact with the most uncomfortable part about the practice. So it just makes it very hard. So I'm gonna try and do one round without talking, just to So there's like a 20 or 30-second delay between anything you do with the breath and right here. So like while I'm sitting here thinking about the technique, trying to talk about the technique and do the whole thing, like it makes it the least pleasant, most uncomfortable thing imaginable to be that much in the mind, right next to where like my CO2 intolerance is loudest. But there's I have other videos of like, you know, taking this down to 30% or whatever, and so that range of blood discharge from 0 to 30 is like the range of strength, and it's a little bit like how hard can you squeeze something, right? I cannot squeeze it at all to hold it, and then I could have a death grip on it, going as hard as possible. For the most part, I'm only to do this fine motor stuff or to most skills, I'm only operating 3% strength, 10% strength. Like there's not very many things where I'm going like everything all at once. And so the same thing is true in terms of the breath stuff. Like your range, you know, your total strength might be down to 50%, 70%, 30% if you're in shape. But in terms of accomplishing or becoming functional in this area, it's only in the 90s, 80s. Semi-functional in the 80s or 70s is absurdly, you know, that's a lot. So it's like you don't have to get hung up on, you know, number go down with the desaturation. It's mostly just number get comfortable, and you'll find that if you get comfortable at like 90, this is synonymous with like very deep states of relaxation, of the inner dialogue has been silenced. It's not so much that the inner dialogue has gone silence, but when you do this and you become more interested in the desire of the blood rather than the CO2 alarm, all that is the inner dialogue and the desire to breathe, and that whole thing is all happening in an area where you can move away from it. So you could describe it as like I've silenced the inner dialogue, or I've made my mind quiet. It's not that. It's like I've become more interested in something deeper. And so that's like a moving away from the chatter. The mind chatter, like this, the place that I'm talking about, is in the exact same place as that. Like I need to breathe. I'm out of air. I'm low, and you can realize by looking at this stuff, you have no. The whole thing of like, oh, I desire air is complete nonsense. It's I'm uncomfortable with the message my nervous system, my ego, my mind is giving me about the amount of CO2 in my body. It's saying, oh, it's off. And you realize that the activity, the practice and everything has nothing to do with whether you're having any comfort or discomfort with the CO2. It's changing the magnetism of the blood, of the hemoglobin, right? So that there's a full magnet, right, where there's no charge, is hemoglobin filled up with oxygen. That's what it wants. So as you separate the hemoglobin from the oxygen, you get that picture of there's two poles on a charge that's separated. So you get these field lines in place between hemoglobin and oxygen. So when it's really close, the field lines are pretty strong, but when they're separated, the field lines are, you know, weak, and they go a long way. So as you desaturate your blood, the field, the magnetic, the magnetic stuff that your blood is attached to, it goes up. So as you move through the environment, the hemoglobin is still, all those field lines are suddenly like way stronger. So you can become sensitive to or pick up on a lot of that stuff around you, and it's like it's field lines, yes, to the air. That's so weak, but it's causing you to drag and pull on the air, and you can just listen or hear what's going on in the electromagnetic sea that is the air around you, using the oxygen molecules as antennas. The oxygen molecules all around you are like antennas, so as they move in particular ways, it pulls on your blood, because the blood's attracted to it. And so that is information that goes into the body, and you can start to feel like information that's carried in the air. And the air is a very subtle medium, and it moves around from the tiniest little disturbances. So you can, that's, you know, it's that ability to like move and all that is why it can support something as nuanced as language, like these sound waves moving through it that have enough code to have like meaning of like a hand or a ceiling fan or all these the air supports these vibrations that contains that can contain concepts. And so there's lots of different energy waves moving through it in that way that you can start to listen to or hear if you can feel the desire or the attraction that your blood has to oxygen. And if you're running around it like fully saturated or in that comfortable area where I don't have any CO2 and my oxygen is topped off, then there's conversely zero magnetic attachment to that realm. And that's how you sense like what to be or do or whatever. So when people are doing intense exercise or causing the blood to desaturate, during those moments of extreme desaturation is extreme connection to this environment or to this area. So people, when you do that, you tend to get smarter, your intuition goes up, your body, the control of your body goes up. So when people exercise, they get control over how they eat, how they think, how they do all that other stuff. Like all the games is all kind of like desaturation causes the blood to become magnetic. You start to be able to use the air and the movement and the currents of the air, the medium within which there's oxygen. That all of that becomes like a big antenna, and then that's just where all the different yeah, it's like it's the game, you know, it's the game. So everyone's kind of in this. See, like basically it's saying that people are so sensitive that if you look at the world correctly, the space around you becomes as dense as what most people feel is water. And so that's as the blood becomes more magnetically attracted, the space becomes dense like water. It becomes heavy. It's difficult to move. It's difficult to think with that big of a connection or load to the surrounding environment. But at the same time, it like floats you. You can listen, you can hear, you can feel big wave sets. The world becomes denser, thicker, more full, more immediate. And what is it full of and with? It's like your breath, your life. So people get these feelings of oneness and connection because you're connected to that sort of which you are. The energy coming in, the air seeing all this is suddenly connected to that, and that causes entire frame shifts and all that. And it's just it's very weird that this is you know, people are capable of being conscious of this, but it's also simultaneously very hard to get people to be conscious or to be valid, like to you know, it's the human animal, I guess. You know, it's like this isn't something that you would be interested in as an animal, a non-reflexive, non-self-aware animal. But like if the human potential is reached, there's some sort of acknowledgement or understanding of this this reality, and it just goes away once things are fully satiated. Once polarities are satiated, then the magnetic connection between those poles goes away. So then there's a felt sense of disconnection from the loss of charge. And then if the charge builds up, then there's that results in I'm separate but I'm connected. The magnetism is like pulling around. If there's a satiation of the charge separation, then there's no, you can move around and this doesn't respond at all, right? Like if you're imagine if you're touching and there's no magnetic connection, you can move around, but it doesn't really feel like I'm connected or one being. Whereas if there's charge separation, you can move around and it moves the other thing around. And so even though there's distance or separation, you actually feel like one thing. And yeah,